So dialogue is not an abstract practice, it's a concrete practice between concrete human beings who come to the dialogue with their histories, with their traditions, with their assumptions, with their complexities of other parts of their dialogue, and so forth. And then I also want to agree, and it's been said several times, that dialogue is not an end in itself and is a means to an end. We need to ask in organizations like this that are dedicated to dialogue, what is our impact? Where do we see our impact in the world, in our own communities, in our relationships between communities, and so forth? However humble that may be, it is helpful for us to pinpoint where those effects are. Because dialogue is concrete and between persons, I'm going to just say one more thing about myself. I've been introduced because I am concrete, and the way I think about what's been said is through my own concreteness. I'm from North America, as you can tell from my accent, from the United States, and I am a Protestant. And so I'm a Protestant North American being asked to think together with you about a Catholic-Jewish dialogue. One of the reasons perhaps I was asked to do this is just for that perspective to open up the question of how do we learn from each other. Another perhaps is that I lived in Brazil for many years and taught at the university in Brazil for many years. So I know something about interreligious dialogue in one part of the South American continent. And I also worked at the World Council of Churches for many years and know then some other parts of dialogue. Finally, perhaps I was chosen because, like our friend, our rabbi speaker today, I'm the president of the seminary. The seminary I'm the president of was started 180 years ago as a Protestant seminary. Today it is still by its charter a Protestant seminary, but 35% of our students and faculty are Muslim, and probably 20% are Jewish. So it's a Protestant seminary doing theological graduate education in a somewhat different way than most seminaries do. So dialogue, in fact, I teach, I'm part of a team that teaches a course in how to do dialogue, which is a required course for all our students. So as I think about what has been so eloquently spoken, I think about how when we get together in conferences like this, one of the main things we do in one way or another is share with each other our own experiences of dialogue. And sometimes we share the procedures of how our dialogues have taken place and what seems to work and what seems not to work. And some of the time, we share breakthroughs in theological conversations or in ways of cooperating with each other or insights we have had that we had never had before. And sometimes we share frustrations. So in a formal way, what is happening here today is what we do informally when we sit with each other for dinner or in workshops and so forth, which is, here is an example of a dialogue, 50 years of Jewish Catholic dialogue. Here is an example, and what can we learn from it, right? And so that is where I really want to focus. Certainly in my years in Brazil, I learned from Catholicism. I was in Brazil in the 80s and the 90s, and I learned liberation Christianity from Brazilian Catholics. And I learned the themes, the biblical themes of liberation, and the ways in which we as individuals and as communities understand Scripture is related to who we are concretely and the kinds of lives we lead. That is, the kinds of questions that we bring to Scripture. So my years in Brazil changed my own Christianity. My years in dialogue, formal and informal, with Catholicism changed my own take on Christianity. They changed the way I thought about Christian theology and about Christian moral responsibility. And certainly one of the reasons why I'm involved as much as I am in interreligious dialogue today is because of the intra-religious dialogue that I experienced for a decade living as a Protestant minority in Brazil in very creative years of Brazilian and Latin American Catholicism. So I bring that same question to the table today. What do I, as a Protestant, what do you as a Jew, what do you as a Catholic, what do you as a North American or a European or wherever you are, an Israeli, what do I learn from this Jewish Catholic dialogue of 50 years ago? One of the things we learn is the conviviality, the willingness to, the urgency of, the persistence of staying in dialogue. And I think that's really something to underline and to celebrate. One of the things I wanted to ask our speaker is, at the beginning of these 50 years, it sounded from the names you mentioned that several of the dialogue partners were Protestant. You mentioned Emilio Castro, who was, ended up being the head of the World Council of Churches, and Jose Miguel Bonino, and so forth. And so one of the questions I asked is, what happened and Isaiah. And so the question I ask is, what happened to that presence? Is it still present in the Catholic-Jewish dialogue? And maybe you're not the one to answer that. But a question that I bring is, when we focus on one dialogue in a society, then we want to ask, well, where are the other dialogue partners and how do they relate to the dialogue? So one question here would be, how do Protestant Argentinians relate to the dialogue? And I understand there are several million people of Muslim origin in Argentina, some of whom are practicing Muslims and some of whom are not. So one of the things I ask myself as I listen is, does the richness and the depth and the experience of Jewish Catholic dialogue spill over into any dialogue that is or isn't happening with Judaism, or with Islam, or for that matter with indigenous religions, which I imagine there still are some here in Argentina. So what do I learn, and what do those people learn, or what do you all learn from the Jewish Catholic dialogue that spills over into other dialogues that both Jews and Catholics are involved in? The role, therefore, also of the intra-religious work that happens as a result of inter-religious dialogue. What is the impact inside of Judaism? Different voices in Judaism of this conversation with Catholics. Is there a history of the conversation within Argentinian Judaism that is a response to this Catholic-Jewish dialogue, and what do we learn from that? Because it is undoubtedly the case that our interreligious dialogical work impacts back on our communities and their own conversations. And so I ask that kind of impact as well. In fact, I think it's a really positive, vibrant contribution to our religious communities as we take what we've learned in interreligious dialogue back to our religious communities. I have just two other things to say. One is, every dialogue, or every dialogue about dialogue, has notes in one way or another the tension between grassroots involvement in daily life together, and the elite dialogue of intellectuals, religious leaders, and so forth. And so, again, I ask the question of the impact of this 50 years of dialogue. Where do we see it in terms of the grassroots, and maybe how does the life in grassroots get reflected in the dialogue? Do you follow me? Okay. And then finally, because I am Christian and Protestant, but this is a concern, or not a concern, an awareness of all Christians, Christianity is becoming a Southern religion. It's becoming a religion of the South. The vibrancy of Christianity is moving from the North to the South, and not just in Protestantism, but also in Catholicism. And as Christianity moves and picks up more vibrancy in the South, there are a lot of new conversation partners. I wonder about the conversation partners with people that sometimes my own tradition has trouble conversing with. I wonder about the conversations with Pentecostals, for example, or non-historic Protestantism or Catholicism. The new religious Christian movements, and how this dialogue does or does not interact with and reflect with those. So thank you very much for your talk today.
Thank you, Professor Haspel. Of course, we'll have not a whole lot of time to answer questions that whole weeks could be devoted to, but we'll try and do our best. Our final speaker is Professor Norberto Padilla from the Pontifical Catholic University of Argentina. He is also the former Secretary of Religious Affairs of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs here in Argentina. Please welcome Professor Padilla.
Thank you very much, Professor Cunningham. I have the nearly impossible task of reacting to Rabbi Skorka. I realize to say it in Spanish, of course. Quiero citar, como punto de partida, el caso excepcional de nuestra Constitución de 1853, cuyo preámbulo ofrece el bienestar general y los beneficios de la libertad para nosotros, para nuestra posteridad y para todos los hombres del mundo que quieran habitar el suelo argentino, invocando la protección de Dios, fuente de toda razón y justicia. Esa convocatoria resonó en Europa y dentro de ella en comunidades judías asoladas por los pogroms, la discriminación en todo tipo. Y muchos llegaron impulsados por la visión de hombres como el varón Mauricio de Hirsch, arraigaron en las ciudades y los campos, convivieron con las dificultades y la solidaridad que bien señala Skorka y otros grupos inmigratorios y con la población criolla, lo que permitió a Alberto Berchunov escribir el libro Los gauchos judíos. Creo oportuno destacar que entre los llegados, además de los de Europa, estaban los de Medio Oriente, judíos sefaradíes y árabes, cristianos y musulmanes, que compartieron en pueblos y ciudades del país la vida social y económica, incluso con los mismos clubes para todos ellos sin distinción. Aunque esto llegó a su fin en 1948, con miras a un futuro de paz justa y duradera entre israelíes y palestinos, es un antecedente de diálogo y encuentro. El rabino Skorka desenrolla ese hilo muy fino de la relación judeo-católica en vísperas del cincuentenario de Nostra Aetate, pero que ya encuentra su comienzo en Juan 23, yo soy José, vuestro hermano, y un hito trascendental en el Papa Francisco. Me atrevo a repetir y recordar algunos nombres, mejor dicho, no voy a repetir los nombres, sino recordar personas que han fallecido recientemente, como el rabino Ángel Kreiman, el obispo Guillermo Lieden, fallecido casi a los 101 años de edad hace un mes, junto con el obispo Justo Carl Laguna, grandes promotores de esta relación, fue el cardenal Guarrachino, sepultado en la Catedral Metropolitana de Buenos Aires, debajo del memorial de la Shoah que se instaló gracias a su esfuerzo. Y también a nuestro compatriota, el primer embajador de Israel ante la Santa Sede, chaqueño Samuel Adas. No siempre fueron comprendidos en sus propias comunidades, pero no se dieron por vencidos. Cristianos, específicamente católicos y judíos, se descubrieron, entablaron un diálogo fraterno. La imagen del Papa Francisco, Skorka y Omar Abud, abrazados en Jerusalén, es semilla plantada en el suelo argentino que fructifica como símbolo y promesa. El diálogo no es un fin en sí mismo, decía hoy el cardenal Mejía, citado por Skorka, y se ha vuelto a repetir en la palabra de Claudio de Fernando también. Leon Klenicki, el gran amigo y siempre recordado, decía: no se trata de té y simpatía. Dialogar requiere un aprendizaje para conocerse, interrogarse, compartir lo que conocemos y buscamos, descubrir los seres humanos hijos del mismo Dios. Es compadecerse, pedir perdón, reconciliarse, aventar prejuicios. El diálogo es paciente, no se cansa ni se irrita, sino que se alegra en la verdad, como del amor escribía San Pablo en la carta a los Corintios. En 2004 tuvimos la reunión del ILC, International Liaison Committee, a que hizo referencia también el Rabino Skorka. En esa declaración hubo una condena al terrorismo que también hizo el Papa en Jerusalén recientemente, el llamamiento a la comunidad internacional frente a ese fenómeno. Pero quisiera apuntar que no debemos aceptar en forma crítica la violencia, que hay reglas y exigencias éticas en el trato del adversario. De ahí que en estos momentos trágicos sea legítimo cuestionar acciones y políticas de gobiernos concretos, cuidando no confundir los cuestionamientos ni con el antisemitismo ni con el antisionismo, ya que hacerlo sin distinciones es un provecho realmente para los antisemitas, que los hay. Roguemos que todos, israelíes y palestinos, eviten las iniciativas y los actos que contradicen la declarada voluntad de alcanzar un verdadero acuerdo, de que no nos cansemos de perseguir la paz con determinación y coherencia, decía en Jerusalén nuestro compatriota Francisco. El lema de aquel encuentro puso en agenda Tzedek Tzedaká, justicia y caridad, nacida de experiencias profundamente traumáticas vividas en nuestro suelo, pero que nos impulsan hacia el futuro. En efecto, nuestra relación no puede, bajo riesgo de pasarnos de la mujer de Lot, anclarse en las tragedias del pasado, sino hacer memoria, eso siempre, darnos la mano, caminar juntos. Hay una dimensión del trabajo quizás al interior de nuestras religiones, para que aún en los sectores cristianos y de la comunidad judía cerrados al diálogo y al encuentro, a partir del respeto y el interés por conocer y comprender, descubran qué bueno y alegre es estar los hermanos juntos. Y recuerdo ahora que lo citaba el cardenal Bergoglio en su carta a Abraham Skorka. Y diría que nada mejor que ofrecer la Biblia, diálogo vigente, según el ciclo televisivo Bergoglio-Skorka, y tomar también lo que Benedicto XVI proponía en la sinagoga de Colonia, el decálogo como patrimonio y compromiso común, no una carga, sino la indicación de una vida en plenitud. En un mundo en el que Dios es olvidado e ignorado, en que los seres humanos se sienten solos, despreciados, víctimas de la violencia, el hambre y la injusticia, cristianos y judíos, desde nuestra propia identidad, podemos y debemos servirlos, curar las heridas, tender la mano, decir juntos que Dios es rico en misericordia y fiel a sus promesas. Debemos multiplicar los foros abrahámicos para proclamar al Dios de la vida y nunca la muerte en nombre de Dios ni en nombre de ideologías como las padecidas por la humanidad en el siglo XX, reafirmando la libertad religiosa para que nadie sea perseguido y discriminado por su fe, como ocurre hoy en zonas de Irak y otras regiones del mundo. Abraham Skorka con el Papa Francisco son expresiones vigorosas de diálogo sincero y cordial, enraizado en la amistad a partir de tanto compartido. Puedo decir, eso es toda una pedagogía del diálogo que hace parte de la vida de lo compartido, no puramente, aunque también sea importante, de lo que es intercambio académico. La Argentina y el mundo necesitan multiplicar estos ejemplos, poniendo a cada uno su grado de arena, para que, y parafraseo a David Weissman esta mañana, para que los niños y jóvenes sean a la vez herederos y constructores de la paz y la justicia que la expresión bíblica se abrazan en el amor de Dios.
Thank you, Dr. Padillo. I just, if I may interject a personal note, it's so nice to hear the voice of Rabbi Leon Kanicki in your remarks. I can well remember many times, as I'm sure can Sister Celia Deutsch, who is here, who co-edited a memorial volume for Leon. I can remember the tea and sympathy line, you know, but also one of his other lines that I think is very relevant to all of our conversation is the phrase that ICCJ picked up a few years ago, "Let us have mercy upon words," was also one of his proverbs, you know. Anyway, thank you for that. Our time has elapsed, but I've asked Rabbi Skorka if he would like to conclude our session with a few comments in response or additional thoughts that he might have. So please, Rabbi Skorka.